Hey, what's going on, you guys? Josh back with another video here for you. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. And today I want to quickly talk about the pros and cons of using margin, right? Now, before we get started, I want to quickly just say that I'm not a guru, nor do I want to push that persona onto you guys. I'm just an average dude, an average trader like everybody else. I do trade full time, but with that being said, I'm not going to try to turn you into a millionaire. I'm not going to try to sell you some DVD course. I'm just a normal dude who's learned a couple things about trading, and I want to make videos talking about those things to hopefully help some of the newer traders out there, especially people that are struggling to get over, a specific, hurdle in their trading career. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk about the pros and cons of using margin. So, at some point in every trader's career, we're faced with the decision of whether or not we should use margin, right? Some people call it leverage. It's a tool that's extremely helpful, but it's also extremely destructive if it's used improperly. Now, I'm not making this video to persuade you on whether or not you should use margin, and although it's popular practice to demonize it, we're all adults who are capable of making our own decisions. So instead, I want to touch on some things that you should consider before deciding on whether margin is the right tool for you, right? When discussing the pros and cons of margin, the first thing we need to do is establish the reality of your situation as a trader, right? Depending on where you're at in your trading career, variables such as capital, experience, and your emotional tolerance are going to drastically influence the usefulness of margin for you. Are you an individual who's been studying stocks for the past 2 years, but, for whatever reason only has $1,000 to start with? Or are you fairly new to trading with maybe 6 months under your belt, but you're sitting on 30 grand worth of capital, right? Are you geared more towards swing trading or day trading? Are you interested in quick momentum scalp trades or the big winner that plays out over 2 or 3 hours intraday? Can you mentally handle being in a $25,000 position and seeing your P&L swing $500 or $1,000 at a time, right? The list goes on, but these are all things that end up getting overlooked because most traders see margin as a way to grow their account from $1,000 to $10,000 in a month. So who should use margin, right? How should you be looking at margin when considering your growth as a trader? Well, coming from someone who's learned a thing or two about over leveraging and blowing up small accounts, I think I can help you, steer in the right direction. Okay. And to do so, I'm going to ask you a few questions in return, right? So the first question is, excuse me. The first question is, are you trading consistently? And if your answer to this is no, then I highly recommend you avoid using margin for the time being, because in the end, it'll do more harm than good, right? Consistency is key. And there's a quote that says, you have to learn how to make $100 a day before you can make $200 a day, right? And that's so true. Once you become consistent with small size, then scaling up your account with margin becomes the better choice. But the closest thing to getting rich in the stock market is using leverage. And although it works wonders, it has to be used in conjunction with a consistent trading plan. The second question I want to ask is, can you manage your risk, right? It's no secret that trading is risky business. So adding margin on top of an already volatile profession, basic risk management structures might not be sufficient enough, right? So to ensure that you're doing your damnedest to protect and covet your capital, it's a smart idea to adjust your risk. And, for example, instead of using a typical 2-to-1 risk to reward ratio, maybe bump that sucker up to a 4-to-1 whenever you're using leverage. That way you're ensuring that, you're taking trades that yield bigger wins and offset the losses that you take while using that same margin, right? So if you don't use margin and you take a $100 loss, no big deal. But let's say you're using margin and you take a $500 loss, right? So to offset that loss that you take on the margin, try to look for setups where you can get a 4-to-1, 5-to-1, 6-to-1 risk to reward ratio. That way, whenever you do have that win, you're winning 6 times what you would normally lose on that same margin, if that makes sense. And the last question I want to ask is, can you handle the added emotional stress? So for anyone that's watched my other videos, I love talking about the emotional aspect of trading because I think it's the main reason why people blow up their accounts and end up failing, right? This is probably the hardest question for most people to answer because it requires us to be honest with ourselves. It forces you and me to look at ourselves and look at the reality of our flaws and say, hey, these emotions are getting the better of me and, I'm really struggling with this. If you're struggling to control your emotions with the size that you're trading now, imagine what you're going to be like with 4 times that size. All the holes and gaps in your emotional armor are going to be that much more apparent, and it'll be a disastrous situation, right? And it'll have disastrous consequences. So get your emotions in check and ensure that everything you're doing is done with the plan that you can adhere to. Now, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys learned a thing or two. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comments below, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.